Yet others will look at it as a mining opportunity, as a way to make more money. Like, well, that's okay, we can mine there, and once we've finished that, we'll go and mine over there. People don't believe that there's a finite amount.
So how about this one? Again, I'm talking more than listening, perhaps, but I have a question. So I use the word middle way. My model is, as a human, construct this brain and the heart.
Yeah.
Okay, the heart is the traditional or the basic where we came from, the miracle of the universe that is being us to be fed and be able to live.
Yeah.
And the mind is ego and whatever can happen with the process of AI and whatever. So this has a benefit for us to live long or whatever in a way. And that's who we are. So we cannot dislodge that part of it. So how to use the brain and listening to your heart. That was the third book I wrote.
Yeah.
That's the theme. And the Dalai Lama commented on that one. So I'm still on that framework. And the way I can explain to people and myself is that not extreme, but it's, in a way, it's good to go back to the Garden of Eden and remember it, connect to the root, and then find the happy medium of the balanced approach of life. That's middle way kind of a notion, not just purely on the brain or not just purely on the heart, but there's what is the, instead of extremely extreme to fight each other, it's not going to go anywhere. So how to massage it? What do you say about that kind of thinking?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that if you were to look at Western society, it's a narcissistic way of looking at life. Me, myself, and I. And this is your brain taking over control.
Being conditioned to be thinking.
And you're being conditioned by an education system that tells you that you have to have more and grow and do all these things. So part of that is a programming issue.
Right.
Your heart will often tell you the opposite. But if that whole narcissistic way of viewing the world is in control, then it's very difficult for you to be able to listen to your heart because you will override that every time.
Yeah, the alone guy just sitting on the corner and these guys are watching the TV and...
Yeah. So trying to reconnect is about programming. I talk about it, I watched my young daughter growing up and I'm growing her with empathy. So she's seeing more love than all of the other kids that she's seeing around her. She's seeing values. She's connected to the water. She's connected to the land. She's not
because
she's not all day on this.
Right. Yeah.
She's we're at the beach. We're exploring.
So what it comes down, is the conditioning. The word you may have used the habitual pattern developed because of the way that we immerse ourselves in the environment and food.
Because we have a learned behavior when we have an instinctive behavior. And our instinctive behaviour is still a learned behaviour, and it happens over a period of time from when we're 5 to about 11 or 12. So if you look at something
5 to 11 or 12?
5 to 11 to 12 years old.
Is
when our values are created. And it's very hard to shift them up.
Yeah, because the brain structure just get hardened.
Yeah, and a good example of that is something like domestic violence. So we know that domestic violence, that 62% of children or people who commit domestic violence come from a domestic violent background.
Yeah.
So their instinctive reaction, which has been programmed into them in a stress situation or an anger situation, is to lash out.
Right.
I've always found is an interesting thing that I've done for a long time is like if I'm going to do business or I'm going to spend time with people, I like to have a drink with them.
Sure.
Because the thing about alcohol is it strips away a lot of that civilized veneer.
Yeah.
And what you tend to do is learn more about the person underneath.
Right.
I'm very good at drinking but not drinking.
Yeah.
And watching them drink.
Yeah.
And then once they've had a few drinks, asking them tough questions and listening to the answers.
Right.
And it gives you a real insight into some people when they
how
get
much
drunk,
you can talk.
Yeah, some people get drunk, they get all cuddly and they're really soft, and you can tell they grew up in a beautiful, loving environment. If people get angry and uptight and short-tempered, then they've grown up, and that programming from that 5 to 11 has been one of ill discipline and trouble. So you can understand a lot if you can strip away. We did a documentary with David Bellamy for the BBC back in the early 90s called The Human Animal.
Oh, human animal. That's a good title.
Yeah, and we basically the BBC's way of doing things with camera crews is like you give up ideas and they say, well, you do that scene and you do that scene and you do that scene. And the scene that we had to do was always a juxtaposition between animal behaviour and human behaviour. And so the one of the best shots I remember doing for that was a shot of the top of the Alps of the South Island, these two big stags, and the steam is rising off their backs, and they come crashing together with antlers together, and then you push focus, and in the background are all the hinds standing there waiting to see who's going to be daddy.
Yeah.
You know, so whichever one of these stags wins gets the girls.
Right.
And then we juxtaposition with that to a shot of Southland at a rugby game, with the two scrums coming together and the steam coming off the back of the scrum, and then push focus to the girls and the banner waving banners. Yeah!
You did that?
Yeah, we did that, and we did another one with the albatross at Albatross Point, doing this beautiful dance when they meet each other.
Yeah.
And then we cut to a nightclub at 3 o'clock in the morning of the guys and girls having this dance. And you know,
animal in us, human animal. Well,
and
what are interesting? Is that on the YouTube? Could
probably
be, right?
is, yeah. Human Animal it was called. It was BBC. It would have been 1991 or 92. And but it was a wonderful sort of bringing people back down to earth and saying, hey, look, we're thinking we're better than we actually are. We are actually animals. We are part of this ecosystem called Earth.
Yeah, the Greek mythology is the man and the horse or something.
We're not better than.
Yeah.
We are. And the sooner we understand that and we reconnect with all those things is really important, because connection's everything. We have to connect mentally. We have to connect from an empathy point of view. We have to understand our environment. And at the moment we don't, and that's sending humanity down a really dark path.
And then on top of the issue that you're talking related to the habitat pattern, is to change the habitat pattern is not going to be easy, because of the condition takes so much energy to get there. To change it requires about the same amount or more energy to go into something.
It has to be generational.
That's why it's awakening in a way.
Yeah, and it has to be. We look at it now. And I watch, for instance, our kids at school are learning about the environment. They're learning about the value of trees. They're going, this school's great. They're out picking up plastic on the side of the street. They're doing really positive things. And the kids, I've seen my daughter tut people at the beach for dropping a piece of, like an ice block stick on the beach.
Yeah.
No, can't do that.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, God, don't embarrass us. But they're doing the right thing. You're seeing another generation coming through. The connection with this generation, the school again, with te reo, with our native language. Mm-hmm. When I grew up at school, I was at a school that was predominantly Māori and Pacific Islanders, and we didn't have Māori as an option for language.
Right. Yeah.
We could take French or German.
I took German and I don't remember anything.
No. And it's like, well, what's the point? I mean, our own language wasn't being taught when I was growing up. Now, te reo is a part of every school system, which is wonderful. So there's a new reconnection happening with our next generation. What we need to do with this generation coming up is we need to change the teaching tools that we're using. We need to rethink how we teach them things. I'm not saying we change anything about maths, any of those other things, but we need to teach about economies, about economics, about our connection with the earth. We've got to teach a different way, and this generation's not going to change. We're going to just have this fight constantly between the left and the right.
Okay.
Around the world.
Okay.
But the next generation we can change.
Yeah. I think I have to stop here. I mean, you can eat only a little bit at a time. And the habitual change is one example. And I met you the second time to talk like this, or even the first time. So I think I have to breathe in and out. And meaning my meditative state is to organize to see, let's say here is me, and here's this information. and I'm weaving in.
Yeah.
I can relate to that, but I don't want to miss any of the spot that and it just generally pops up, which is when I'm not doing anything. That's that meditative process of I call samadhi, of no mind state, which is like go fishing, and so I spend about 3-4 hours or so at least to have that moment, and the other time I work on things and I go crazy about the stupidity of the AI and the internet. So
I mean, that for me, it's in the water. So when I put my head under the water,
let's talk about that.
Nothing else exists.
Yeah, let's finish. But this story is not done. So
we I remember having a psychologist come and interview me about how I dive with sharks.
That's an interesting thought.
Because he wanted to understand how...
over the fear.
We were the first people to be diving with mako sharks, free swimming with them in the world.
Yeah.
And he was trying to understand how we did it.
Yeah.
And we quickly learned that when you talk about meditative states,
right.
You quickly learn that if you, as a cameraman, you want to focus all your energy on getting that perfect shot and making sure the movement is perfect and thinking about the next shot and thinking about the last shot.
Right.
And when you're in a controlled environment on land, you give 100% of your energy to that.
Right.
When you're in the water with a dangerous animal, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So you have to divide your brain into 3. You have to have a third of your brain looking at the job you're trying to do.
Not everything.
Yeah. You have a third of your brain thinking about the safety elements and the environment that you're in. And then the other third of your brain has to be focused on you, because what we know of diving with sharks is that any change in heart rate and movement,
they can detect it.
He's trying to work out whether you're another predator or whether you're prey.
Yeah.
If you exhibit any...
They're very intuitive to figure out.
So if my heart rate rises, he's going to go, oh, he's scared of me.
Right.
And that may evoke an attack. So suddenly you're in a situation where you have to divide yourself into 3. You have to be thinking about yourself.
Right.
And this is often, it's the same kind of philosophy that you do in everything. You have to be you have to be centered on yourself. You have to be in the right space to have this conversation. So you've got to think about, where am I in this space?
No wonder I want to have this space that a little bit open.
Am I happy? Then you've got to think about what else is going around you. We don't have to worry about this because there's no cyclones coming or wild animals going to attack us here.
Right.
So we can eliminate that from this conversation.
Yeah.
And then you've got to think about what it is that you're doing and why.
Yeah.
And how you divide up your brain in that thought process.
So you explained that to the people who came to talk.
Yeah.
And what did they say about it?
Well, it was the first time he'd seen that process, because it wasn't until he asked.
But why did he come? Because he want to figure out, and you were explaining your solution,
he thought I
right?
was mad, because
When you
psychologically, how could I be diving with sharks? But then when we started talking it out, and we started because
how to prepare,
then there's that realization. Actually, you've actually worked it out.
Yeah.
And then so from a psychologist's point of view, he was going, okay, how can I then apply some of those principles to other situations?
That's what we are doing all the time, except we don't know it.
Yeah, exactly. and then understanding that you're doing it helps you to make sure that you do it correctly. So if you're in a
where's the escape route too?
Yeah, exactly. Fight or flight response, you got to look at that. If you're painting a house, you can't be thinking about just painting. You've got to be thinking about how your ladder's stacked, what your safety is around you, where the other people are. And people do it not thinking. But if you think about it and you understand how
that's
you're
why I say
dividing
that
the time,
heart and the brain, that's the kind of...
It makes it, you are safer, you make better decisions, you're in better space. And that's what he was looking for. And
you're looking in the multi-dimensional space of the world, or angles or something like that, right?
And we're almost always doing it, but we don't know we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so once you get your head around the fact that you're doing it, then you understand how much energy you can put into various things. One of the things I learned about getting sick in the last 2 years ago was, because I'd lost a large amount of kidney function, I had to re-evaluate energy in my body. So
distribute into the right place, kind of thing.
Well, what I was doing up until then, in terms of from an energy expending. I can't do that anymore. So
Accepting.
all of those things that the kidneys do to process all the shit that's in your body,
Right.
lactic acid, all that sort of stuff, I don't have that resilience of 100%
Right.
anymore.
So what did you do?
So I had to rethink how
Did
much,
you do that?
trial
Just
and
taking
error.
time and
Taking time. The first couple of times I went out there, I thought I'm just going to go back to work. So I go back to work, and then
you feel
day
it.
4,
Yeah.
I hit the wall, and I literally have to lie down.
Right.
I'm feeling sick.
Listening to your body.
Yeah, and my body's going, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So then you've got to work out how much energy can I apply.
Right.
So my days become shorter. My energy that I use each time has to be considered.
Just like my 4 hours every day kind of thing.
Yeah, so you reconsider how you manage
I think that's the wisdom in my view.
Yeah, it is. And you either get forced into it, and people, if people think about it earlier, then a lot of people
It's so dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it can be dangerous.
There's a guy, Charlie Munger, who's an investor. His famous saying, at least the way I took it, is don't go where you may die.
Yeah.
But we don't know it.
I've spent a whole lifetime going to
I
those places.
think you have. And you may not think that's anything but just a common sense. But it's not common sense. It's not in the brain. You have to feel it.
Yeah. And I think there's lots of things that are involved in that. I think in the early days, if I look back in those early days that you read through, you see that there's an underlying fuel that was driving me, which was adrenaline. So I would come back from these shoots
Totally tired.
totally wired on adrenaline.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I'm in an edit suite and my brain isn't functioning because I'm addicted to this amount of dopamine and stuff that's been pouring through my system during the shoot. So then I get withdrawal symptoms. So I've got to go and do something stupid. Jump off a building, go surfing in really wild waves.
Don't use your brain. That's meditation,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. So I have to, and I learned after a period of time that I was basically getting addicted to that rush.
Right.
And I was pushing myself further and further to get more and more.
And look at today's world. Who's doing that?
Yeah.
And all the politicians up top and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you realise you got to pull back from that. You got to work out. You got to manage things a bit better.
So it's kind of like a middle way kind of thing that I was kind of balancing.
Yeah.
Stuff,
You got to balance it. Yeah. Everything has to be in balance. And that's life, isn't it? If you get it wrong, then you're either going to go down the. Like I said, I did some stuff that I should never have been able to come out of alive. When I look back historically.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of stuff.
Give me one.
Oh, just some of the war zones we went into, some of the situations we got into. We were driving through a place called Wunjama in Liberia, West Africa, in a big convoy, and had a grenade thrown at the truck we're in, and it literally bounced off the window next to my head. Luckily, the driver had said, just wind your windows up through here, it gets a bit dodgy. If we hadn't have wound the window up, the grenade would have come straight into the cab. And it bounced off, and the guys, we're doing an interview with him at the time, is the driver, and we're interviewing him, and I'm sitting next to the window, and the cameraman is
When
here.
it happened?
When it happened. The grenade hits the window, and he glances across over the camera, because we're talking to him on camera, and he goes, just lifts the radio, hang on, grenade, and then all the other trucks move off to the left, grenade goes off, we keep moving. He didn't miss a beat. He kept on with the interview. And the cameraman at that stage is like this. And I'm going, whoa, stop. Stop. How can you just keep going? Oh, you get used to it. It's like, no, you don't get used to a grenade hitting the side of the car. So a lot of that stuff, a lot of the shark stuff we did in the early days, when we first got in the water with Mako sharks, no one knew how they were going to react. It was a huge amount of risk involved in that. Some of the diving situations we got into, I got blown up in the Philippines, and
I told you my Mako story.
Yeah.
Castle Island.
Yeah, good old castle. Yeah.
And I was thinking when you talk about this fraction of the time here and here and here, at the time, did I tell you that I kept half of the fish up in the air and going like this? And I don't know how stupid I was, but it's interesting. Also, I have.
There's a picture from a friend of mine in Niue, and I'm holding a wahoo, big wahoo above my head like that, and there's a shark going up over my shoulder.
Trying to get that.
Trying to get the wahoo out of my hands, and I'm still like, no, you're not going to get my
notice?
fish. And I knew he was right next to me, but he came right over my shoulder in the end, and he knocked the fish out of my hand, but I managed to keep it and get it back to the boat. But you sometimes, you look back and go, well...
Well, that's the reason why this secure feeling of the conditioned way is the way instead of exploring something new. That's part of the defensive mechanism.
Yeah.
And this tribalism is kind of related to that. And this is tickling of how, this can work or not work.
Yeah.
And force them to be hooked up with that situation.
It's everything's about connection. Everything. People need to understand that they're not alone. That every reaction has a reaction. Everything that they do has a connection and an impact on others.
So I think my point, I guess, is that like acceptance. Like the shark is there, accept it. This situation of this and that conditioning, it's there, and we see it in the TV and all that stuff going on. And if I get upset about it, then I lose the mental health and the physical health related to that. So make a judgment. Sometimes you have to distance yourself and then find a channel that you are best suited to do that. I guess that's the middle way, kind of a balancing.
Yeah, and I found over the years I spent a lot of time. I remember after my second divorce that
you had a second divorce.
Yeah,
I had a second divorce too.
Seeing a psychologist because I've been told I should really see somebody about it, and basically them saying that my category, if you were to put people in boxes, my category was a helper. So I get drawn to people who need help and support.
Right.
And from that I learned that I needed to have a line in the sand.
Yeah.
Because I spent a lot of time trying to help other people.
Yeah, you
and they can be...
You're still standing here.
Yeah, you have people who, one of my good friends was a terrible alcoholic going down a terrible path, and I spent incredible amount of energy trying to help him. And to no avail, I didn't get anything back from it, but I poured an immense amount of energy into that. What I should have had is a line in the sand earlier on that said, okay, if he goes past that, then I have to actually think about
listen
me.
to your heart kind of thing.
Listen to your heart and say, you know what? He needs to help himself.
Right.
You've done what you can.
Right.
But you have to be very careful that you don't expend a lot of energy that takes you down, because then you don't have energy to support other people.
So to get that is like, in my case, it's related to the meditation and calm, quiet mind to be the way of observing and making the judgment of how much proportion this and that. In your case, it's experienced learning without any, but the reality of how you faced and looking at the difficulties, and you reflected the body reacting, and then you start to find a way to connect to that source of...
I think that my decisions are always...
you are forced to be in the position, I guess it's what you're saying, basically, right?
Well, I make decisions
you have to find
on using
way
EQ,
out.
not IQ. So my decisions are from here.
Right.
So I will make the decision based on, do I like you as a person? If I do, then I'm going to give you time. I'm not going to make a decision based on what your CV is.
Right.
If I connect with you as a person, then I will allow you in.
Yeah, it's a continuous process of moment-to-moment awareness kind of thing.
Yeah, and you've got to be... The problem with that style of thinking is that people will get in, or you'll get involved in things that are not necessarily good.
Why? If you are aware of each step,
people
it's like a meeting the shark story, right?
Yeah, but humans are different. Sharks are very predictable.
But people are the same.
People are predictable. There's always an ulterior
people
motive.
Okay.
People are always thinking about other things, and there are a lot of really good people in this world, but there are an incredible amount of people who are, as I said, narcissists. So the only thing that matters to them is what they get out of a situation. So their job is to use you in order to get what they need.
Yeah.
And that disconnect between the top and the bottom that you were talking about
right.
is that often that narcissistic view. The greatest leaders in business are the ones who know everyone on the floor by name.
So what's the bottom line of all the conversation if you get back to that, since we get this much further into all the ramification of it?
I think that making decisions from the heart is...
So each person to do that.
Yeah.
That's basically the number one point, right? Yeah. Because if you lose yourself, you're losing everything before.
Exactly. And you have to have good people around you. And
How about cultivating the good people around, and what's the mechanism of being able to do that? I mean, you do this media thing that you can attract, and if you collect and have some sense of who they are, can you, how do you call it, capitalize on it, capitalize in a good sense?
I think it's difficult in today's world because people move
In and out.
They're in and out, yeah. Whereas,
But I accept that too.
but I know that when I go back to Niue and I walk out of the airport, that every one of the guys who are working on the baggage know me by name.
Yeah.
I know that when I go down the street, everyone waves because they know me.
Yeah.
And that never changes, and that's a given.
Right.
Always. Whereas here in Western society, people come and go. People in this town, here one moment, gone next. So we have there's two very different worlds that I live in.
Here is my story of me here, like 4 months, 5 months, and then to Japan 2 months or so, and Hawaii for 3 months, and then California for another. So it's kind of like you are much doing this way, but I was doing lots of traveling around the world.
Yeah.
And that was interesting, just like your case. But human is human, except Russia and China have some opinion. India is different and all that kind of stuff. But
we're all the basic same animal. It's the programming that is
right.
And it doesn't matter where you come from. You're lucky to be born into the situation, or you're unlucky to be born into where you are. And then it's the programming that makes you who you are. And if you have, the wonderful thing about meditation and about Buddhism is that there's a whole different value system aligned with that as a religion. That people have a sense of people rather than a sense of ownership and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
That's like I said, I keep come back to that whole colonization element of the way in which Western society runs. Yeah. It's wrong on every level, and that's the biggest problem that we face.
It seems like accelerating in that direction.
Yeah, well, it's probably got stronger over the last 10 years. I've become more connected to my Māori roots, and then my mother was Irish.
It's a specific thing in New Zealand you're talking about.
Oh, it's everywhere in that.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, my mother's Irish, so but again, an oppressed people by a colonist country, which was Britain.
Yeah.
And you quickly learn that there's the way in which things are taught, and the reason why Trump is in power is because of the way in which the system is teaching people.
Yeah.
And if we change that philosophy, if we change the way in which we teach people or teach our youth coming through, we'll have a very different world. But it's not. We can impart our knowledge, and we can hand that and gift that to our children and our friends of our children, and hopefully some of our friends around us.
Yeah.
But if you want to, it's like we're working on a project at the moment. Yesterday we were on an organic farm in the middle of the Waikato here. Spectacular farm. Same land as all the other properties around it. No irrigation, no chemicals. Grass is this high, beautiful, lush and green, fat cows. Everyone else is irrigating, feeding out.
Is it permaculture kind of thing?
Yeah. He's just done it really well. Big hedgerows. So what he was saying was, he said, it hasn't rained here for nearly a month, and he's got beautiful, lush green grass. And he said, well, the trees create moisture, so they trap the dew.
Right.
Tall grass and deep root systems traps moisture. All these things that he's done, and you look at the farms around him. It's the right way to go.
It's organic.
Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you've got big corporations, the Fonterras and the Balancers, and that driving through fear and money, this belief that the other system is right, that you need fertilizer, that you need palm kernel. And that's what you're up against all the time. There's definitely better ways to do things that are going to make people healthier and safer. I mean, our health, humanity's health at the moment is on such a massive decline. And it's because of what we eat.
So I think the pain is the important stimulator or educator, perhaps. Unless we feel the pain, maybe nothing happens.
Yeah, but then we feel it. Then that political system and that way that we learn is based on keeping us afraid. People are scared. The reason why, like I said, that Trump got in was because people were scared of the pathway that America was going down. They're worried about their future. They're worried about those things. And fear is a great way to rule. Because if you keep people in fear, then you keep control of them.
So if you look at the history, it goes up and down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's leave it with that one.